I have to admit something. My memory isn't very good. I don't have much recollection of my childhood. I relied on a trick to help me remember things while growing up. What happened in what order and so on, what was it? My mother would say, remember when you were 12 and threw up from food poisoning at that restaurant? Remember? And I was like 12? And my mother would say, that was the day we saw Indiana Jones 3. And you liked it so much. And after that, what did we do? And I'd be like, oh yeah, that restaurant, yeah. And so I relied on movies to remember things. So my timeline of memory relied on when I had seen movies. So why do I bring this up? My mother always took me to movies, always even without question captions. We would sit in the theater and images would appear before us. Were we bored? Even when I was a restless kid? No. Why was I fascinated? The camera, the lighting, the framing. The camera was always moving. It moved on the actors as they spoke. I was transfixed. The separate pictures without words, no dialogue at all, just the pictures. They came together to tell a story. And it was truly powerful. Wow. Especially for one movie. It's stuck in my mind. To this day, it still stands out. How many of you have seen it? All of you? Yeah. This was probably the first movie I'd seen in a theater, that I remember seeing at least. I remember being a little kid and sitting in the theater with my mother all excited. We saw it all the way to the end, and I was in tears. I couldn't sleep that night, and my mother tried to confront me. The ET was gone. I was devastated by that. But I lingered on one part. Remember the opening? The movie opened at night, in the woods. The UFO flashed its light above, the trees blew in the path as it lands, and the creature something scurried out of the craft. The tree bristles as it moves through the woods, and the camera on the cars and trucks arrived at the scene. The high beams illuminated the trees. One of the cars comes to a stop, and the car door opens, and a pair of shoes comes out. Then it pans up to the keys hanging off the man's belt. They don't show this man's face at all. The camera is focused on the keys. I see this. Who was this man? I don't know. Who was it there? I don't know. All I knew was that he was chasing the creature, and the alien escaped to the city. The man goes back, and we fade out. Later in the movie, after the famous bicycle scene near the end, E.T. is dying of disease. They find him and bring him home. They bring it to the bathroom and hide it there until it dies. The boy weeps over E.T.'s body, and then the camera cuts to outside where the police, NASA, and us. One of the tricks has pulled up, the window door opens, and out comes the same feet again. The camera pans up and reveals the same keychain. Did we see his face? I don't know. What's his job? I don't know. But that one detail from before, the keychain matches up with the keychain here. The details tells us that right away this is the bad guy. He's ready to take E.T. and go. We know this all from the keychain, that one detail. And after that, I knew I wanted to make movies from that point on. I wanted to make separate pictures that came together to give us a story, without relying on a script. It was those pictures, and from there my journey began. Later I entered Gallup University. I took courses toward a film major. In one of my classes, there was a professor, Facundo. He passed away recently. He was hearing and couldn't sign. He would brush away the sign language interpreter and sign him and attempt to sign. Eventually, over time in the class, he assigned a project that stood out. Visual expression, question mark? And up until that point, we had learned how to frame shots, how to tell a story, and so on. The teacher had a hard time explaining this. Class, I want you to express something about yourself.
Yeah, I went over that.
I could say something about myself, but what? Then he showed a work of his. He was hearing, remember? The work was from his university days. It had an unusual opening. The camera lingered on his face. Then the camera cut to grass blowing in the wind. Then to a lawnmower. Then to a fire. Then to a man running. Then to clouds in the sky. I didn't understand anything about it, but it was odd, his expression. The teacher added that it had music and sound. This is an abstraction on my life, he said. I want you, this deaf class, to express yourself. I don't want you to copy my movie. This movie is mine. What's yours? As he struggled to explain,
this.
I could see that he couldn't find the words for what he wanted to see from us. He didn't know how to say it. And when the project was due, we turned in our assignments. The teacher told us we had done a good job and we moved on to the next project, but it stayed in my mind. I transferred from Gallaudet to RIT. There, I focused on technology, and I took various courses that focused on cameras, the difference between 50mm and 35mm lenses, how to light a scene with 3 lights, and why we couldn't remove a third light, and so on. You won't believe that there's a particular thing as a course as grammar of the film language. Film language. Wait a minute, there's a course on language for film?
So yeah, each one you just divide each one.
This wasn't like a teacher passing out 2 stapled papers. This is composed entirely of the course, film language. There was a thick book. There were countless terms to give you an idea.
And then, so you get this number, and then you just add all those up to get that.
Do you know these terms? Close up, a medium shot, a wide shot.
It's a lot.
I'll sum it up for you. A wide shot introduces location into a story. In the first frame, we see a landscape with a tree and a house, then a cowboy with a hat chewing on hay. There's a wide shot, and the frame tightens to a medium shot. The frame cuts the man. He's standing by a tree chewing on the piece of hay. Then the close-up tightens the framing even further to the man's head. This shot is used to indicate emotion. So those are 3 kinds of framing. There are even more kinds of shots. In the dole tilt, the dolly shot moves the camera back and forth as it rolls. A crane shot moves the camera up and down. Another kind of technique like that is wrong fit for me. In short, this is used by news shows. Movies, for example, there's a poor little boy crouched over hungry. But a noise narrator tells us that this boy doesn't have, that your support is needed. Wait, there are 2 different stories. There's the hungry, sick boy that arouses after sympathy, and we hear a parallel narration that relates to the story being told on camera. The 2 strands come together to become one story. In deaf film, there are countless elements. I'm telling you, this is a small sampling of what's in film language. There are countless story-related techniques in the opening of the story, the character introductions, the conflict, the upward progression of the story, the conflict, and the earth crashing down. The RV drives away in the nick of time, and then there was even more conflict until the resolution. Everyone is reunited and the action falls down, and then there's a happy ending. I'm talking about American films here, and they're always ending happily. And so there are rules for the progression of action. We are supposed to follow them, and schools interrogate them. We follow these rules. There are many of them. In my class, there were a few deaf students. This is at RIT. I eagerly rolled up my sleeves because I wanted to know the various terms and rules. Everything I wanted to rearrange them so I could make a deaf film. The result is my first film at RIT. The goal was to, deaf, sign dialogue. On the movie screen, if I sign out of the frame, it's always cut. Cut your hand is out of the frame. Do it again. My friend and I wanted to challenge that. I said no, I think that the frame should always contain slightly awkwardly in the film. They would still be able to understand me, so we made this movie. And so we made this movie. 2 interesting things happened here. I showed this to an audience, and I must have been a freshman. I was working with a small camera, and I was filled with. So we executed those ideas just to prove that we could do it. And the audience saw it, and they said, wow. But as I sat in the audience, I felt something was missing. It didn't feel natural. It didn't. My deaf world, the one that I saw, this wasn't it. This movie showed a different world. I realized this. The other thing, why was there a phone? The man was deaf. That was my mistake. I still didn't know how he had a phone. And my struggle began with this project. In the following projects, I followed all of the rules. I tried various ways to rearrange the rules, but I never got the feeling that it was natural. I wanted to watch something on the screen and say, that's my world, right there on the screen. And I had never experienced that. Film language had a box around it, and I felt trapped in this box. I struggled to get out of the box by rearranging the rules, and then I realized I should just put the box aside. This box had a set of rules, developed over time, and everyone else worked with sound. It didn't matter which country you came from, everyone was working with sound as an essential part. This influenced the editing of the movie. Sound was tied up in it. I'm a deaf person. I'm very visual. I didn't even think about sound at all. This realization led me to look within my world and how I perceived it, and how I should apply these principles to film. You all know what a script is, writing on a paper. It starts with INT, a treehouse, and so character, words on a page. My first thought, the language. We use sign language. Sure, I can write it down, my English is okay, but I struggled in writing on the page. Sign language. Bernard Bragg and Ben Bahan and Gallaudet Professor always told us that ASL has cinematic value. They said that sign language is just like the film screen, a roving eye, close-ups, and so on. And that was true, but was it identical? Not really. I think sign language is far more rich than what we have to work with in cinema. ASL goes far and beyond that. So the written script should be discarded. In its place, we should have an ASL script. I signed the story in front of a camera. Recently, I did it for a project, and here's what it looks like. Here we see drawings turned to buildings. This was my first ASL script. I wasn't the only one that used it. We had an entire team, a big team. Of deaf crew members, they were prop artists, actors, and their coaches. The cameramen, editors, special effects people, a big team, and we all relied on this. Sign language, no writing on paper, and here's the result. If I worked on ASL, my word wouldn't expand, and I could easily translate this vision because we were all speaking the same language. They saw the buildings pop up, I got it, I'll take care of it. So this is something we should pursue, ASL scripts. Here's another thing. Camera flow. You all know what editing is. In a shot, a person talks. Then we cut to the other side. No, Mom. Back to the original frame, and so on. That's editing, back and forth between two frames. I looked at this uniform practice, and then we talked in ASL to another person. Do we carry on conversation facing one another? Is that how we talk in ASL? Or do we wave our hands abruptly in front of that person? Oh, okay, what? Is there something on the floor? No. We normally maintain eye contact throughout the conversation. Even when we're walking, we maintain eye contact. Telephone poles come between us, we will still maintain contact. Doesn't matter, we stay connected to each other. We must attune to each other so we can maintain each other. Therefore, the camera should be fluid and constant. This will appear to our inner values. Yes, this was just like my world. I started doing something more. Tapping the camera to a body rig so that when I walk, the camera bounces gently. This is called the steady cam. Using this makes me feel more attuned to the action. Here's an example of a steady cam shot. Another thing, did you see the captions? Notice the captions, they weren't fixed to the bottom of the screen. Those captions just felt like an abrupt break in the edit. My eyes are down, I'm just making eye contact with the actor. I have to look away to read the captions. I want to maintain eye contact. No, my eyes are able to follow the caption as they appear. My eyes can still flow to the sequence. I feel connected to what's going on, and that's my world, and that's it. Here's another element. Recall the voiceover. For us, that sound doesn't jive with what's going on. We're visual people, we don't hear anything. So how do we work around this? Let's go back to the first element, the ASL script. When it's signed, we can see the story. And the second element is flow. Combining these two elements led me to make a film, Vital Signs. A person tells a story as vignettes appearing. The vignettes match up the story.
So the pictures for that, those are good. That's the picture for that shit. So I was like, but the is so on the picture.
He comes to a stop and gets out of the car. Here's the narrator, so the three elements combined make me go back to my teacher at Gauda Fukumu. He didn't find the words at the time, but I think I know what he was trying to say.
Down here.